Hey guys, I'm glad to be here for part of the Watershed Academy series for Partners in Your Watershed. I'm Lucas Cram, as Steve mentioned, and I also have Samantha Johnson on the call with me to answer any of your questions. We represent AML, or the Division of Abandoned Mine Lands. Just to give a little background on AML as a division and a program. We are part of the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act of 1977, which established the AML Reclamation Program under OSM, or the Office of Surface Mining. It wasn't until May 18th, 1982, that Kentucky received conditional programming approval from OSM. So that's all good and important, that date especially. But what is an AML site? Um, an AML site, according to our development guide, consists of areas affected by coal mining that ceased operation prior to 1982, on which no person or entity has any continuing reclamation responsibility under federal or state law. As you can see, that May 18th, 1982 date is actually quite important because it actually establishes eligibility in the AML program in Kentucky. So we have actually 3 decades of in Kentucky mitigating mine hazards and hazards threatening citizens and their homes across the coal fields of eastern and western Kentucky. The AML program actually gets its funding from a coal operator tonnage extraction tax. All this money goes into an AML trust fund, and it's distributed to different states and tribes annually. The 3 biggest users of the AML fund is Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Kentucky. So Kentucky AML can be separated into 5 major groups, 5 major functions. The first being investigations of possible coal hazards. We research and document areas in eastern and western Kentucky for possible AML eligible projects. All AML eligible projects are inventoried in eAMLS, or the Abandoned Mine Lands Inventory System that is hosted by OSM. I have a link for that at the bottom of this presentation. The second is reclamation of eligible mine-related hazards. All AML projects are designed in-house and contracted by AML. We do allow for stakeholder and owner input in our projects. I'm going to breeze through the next couple because we're going to talk about them in detail in another slide. We have bond forfeiture, which is about a reclamation of defunct permits. We also have our waterline and AMD projects, which is acid mine drainage, which occurs as a byproduct of mining. And water lines is all about providing clean water to those who have had their water supplies contaminated by AML eligible mining. And the last is kind of still new to us, but it's our pilot project grants, which is all about trying to spark the economy in the eastern coalfield communities. And again, we'll talk about those last 3 on another slide. So investigations are done both by the AML field office staff and the Frankfurt staff. Field office staffs are the first boots on the ground, while the Frankfurt staff follow up, usually to determine any lingering questions about eligibility. Both the field office and the Frankfurt offices use many different tools to determine eligibility. This includes GIS tools that combine historical and current imagery, as well as mind maps for any problem area. It gets all compiled into a mine history that tries to paint a full picture of the story of what's happening on that property. We also use water sampling data to determine if water is mining related water. It can be hard to get physical links for water problems, so sampling helps us determine eligibility. Drone imagery is becoming one of our tools that we rely on to get a full picture of some of our problem areas and how everything ties together. It can be much easier to see something from the sky than it can be to walk it on foot, and it gives you a good scale of how big a problem area can be or is. And of course, we take lots of photos and videos to document anything we find in the field. So this is just a view of one of what our mine history documents look like. Some of the imagery that we use for that mine history. There's some of our employee sampling, some water samples there. This is actually what some of our samples look like after we put our reagents in our field kits. This is actually some pretty hot water. That far left is just a normal sample, just taking the water out. The middle one is actually the sulfate sample, and the far right one is an iron sample. Just another picture of out in the field, just some erosion divots on some coal refuse. And this is what some of our drone images looks like. As you can see, you can get a full picture of the site with the drone imagery. So now that we have an eligible site, what does a project look like? Examples of hazards for AML eligible mining includes landslides, water-filled pits, open mine portals, high walls, and old equipment and buildings. Of course, the highest priorities are always assigned to problems that directly impact public health and safety. For example, if a slide was pushing a house off its house seat, or if subsidence was causing extreme damage to someone's home. Division of Abandoned Mines does not receive enough funding to address all AML eligible problems. We actually have quite an extensive backlog of projects, and we have new ones popping up daily. We try to do our best to keep up with the highest priority problems and emergencies coming in. So now we're moving on to those other projects. For acid mine drainage projects, they have to have an AML nexus, and they have to be in a watershed of a bond forfeiture. I will explain what an AML nexus is when we get to the pilot project parts, because they also have an AML nexus requirement. All AMD projects are paid with money set aside from the general fund and are used only to abate acid mine drainage. The division also administers a bond forfeiture reclamation program. Before companies begin mining at a site, they post a reclamation bond. The company's bond may be forfeited to the Commonwealth if the company fails to mine and reclaim the site to standards specified in its permit. Forfeited funds are used by the state to reclaim the site for which the bond was posted. And of course, we have those waterline projects. AML administers waterline supply replacement programs. The division extends water lines to areas where drinking water was contaminated by past mining. So just a couple notes on our projects. AML is a cradle-to-grave organization. That means AML funds, designs, and hires the contractors for our projects. Stakeholder input is taken into consideration for all of our projects, though. Acid mine drainage projects sometimes require large amounts of land, and space is not always available for those projects. AML seeks creative passive treatment solutions for all of our AMD sites. We try not to do any active treatments if we can avoid it. AML does not receive any funds to handle all eligible projects. Sorry, stumbled over that word. Projects are all submitted to our oversight agency, OSM, for approval before any work can be done. So now we're going to move on to our pilot projects. So anything you see in bold on this slide is going to be a definition that will be in the slides to come. Pilot projects are a proof of concept that come from the Reclaim Act. They focus on community development and economic growth in Appalachia. All pilot projects require an AML nexus, which is, again, I'll explain in the next slide. The first year was 2016, which was our largest grant, with others posting about 25 million a year. We get a large amount of applicants every year for the pilot project, and all those pilot project applications average about $140 million a year in requests. And as you can see, that means that the grants are actually pretty competitive. All applications are processed by AML. The winners are selected by a panel headed by the cabinet secretary. Those winners then go through a vetting process through OSM. After we enter an MOA with the vetted winners, they perform a NEPA study on the site. And lastly, an ATP comes from OSM, and the project is ready to get going. And I will explain all those bold definitions here in a second. All right, an AML nexus. What it really boils down to is having some sort of AML eligible land connected to your project. This can even mean land adjacent to an AML eligible site. Permitted Title V mine sites cannot receive any eligible AML pilot funds. OSMRE is the Office of Surface Mining Reclamation and Enforcement, or OSM, as I referred to them a few times in this presentation. They are the Kentucky AML Oversight Agency, and they're ones that handle both the vetting and grant ATPs for all of our grants. Vetting is just a review of the pilot project proposal handled by OSM. There are several rounds of questionings from OSM staff in Lexington. Ooh, I don't know how I did that. There we go. An MOA is a memorandum of agreement. It's pretty much a contract between the Cabinet of Energy and Environment and the grantee. It spells out the terms of the project. We have NEPA, which is the National Environmental Policy Act, which is signed in 1970. It's one of the backbones of many modern environmental laws. It's a review of environmental impacts that your project could have. This is done for all projects using federally funded. And of course, an ATP is the authorization to proceed issued by OSM. Before you get this includes more questioning from staff in Lexington, but once given out, it's pretty much a green light for your project to get started. So any additional information that you may need about pilot projects is on our website. And I'll have this link to our website down below at the bottom of this PowerPoint. It has additional information about the grant process on there, and it also has the grant applications. I just want to call attention to one thing on the grant application, that we are still taking submissions for grants and pilot projects up until August 1st of this year. So general types of pilot projects are infrastructure, education, tourism, and industrial style projects. And I'm going to give you a few examples of some of the pilot projects that have come through already in the AMO pilot projects. So we have the Appalachian Wildlife Center. It actually was rebranded to Boone's Ridge recently. It's an elk viewing area trying to get ecotourism into Eastern Kentucky. There's a few pictures there of what the concept art of the buildings would look like. And we have ECAMI, or the Kentucky Advanced Manufacturing Institute. This is more education based. It's actually teaching both youth and adult classes for advanced manufacturing. And then we have the Martin County Water System Controls and Modifications, just some modifications to their water control systems and treatment plants, things like that. This is actually a pilot project and is separate from the Waterline project. And soon, hopefully soon, we'll have our dashboard up and running that actually shows all of our pilot projects, information about all of them, pictures of all the ones that have been through the process and it's already vetted. So hopefully this is up soon for everyone to view. This will be on our website. We're just going through the process right now of finalizing what it should look like and what information is going to be on it. And hopefully we'll have it up soon for everyone to view. So if you guys have any questions, I'll be more than happy to take them. If you need pilot project help, Justin Adams and James Cable are the ones to go to. Samantha Johnson as well is now on that team. And then eligibility or general questions can be directed at either me or Sam.